The giant crystal hall of the Galactic Council shook with worried voices and nervous energy. Beings from all across the galaxy had gathered for this emergency meeting, their strange forms casting long shadows under the bright lights. Some looked like walking trees, others like floating jellyfish, and a few resembled giant insects with too many eyes. Ambassador Veltar slowly walked to the center stage. He was old, very old, even by his people's standards. His skin looked like ancient leather, and his eyes had seen things that would terrify most beings in the galaxy. The Kethmori were known as Watchers and Record Keepers, a race that had been around since before most civilizations learned to make fire. "Friends, allies, fellow beings of this council," Veltar began, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "I stand before you today with the heaviest heart I have carried in my 1,000 years of life." The hall grew quiet. When Veltar spoke, with such seriousness everyone listened. "The Zephyrian Empire plans to attack a small world in the Outer Rim, a blue planet called Earth. They think it will be an easy victory. They are wrong, terribly, catastrophically wrong." From the war section of the council, War Marshal Krex stood up with an angry hiss. His armor gleamed like black metal, and his forearms moved with practiced military precision. The Zephyrians had conquered 12 star systems in the past 50 years, and they were hungry for more. "Old fool," Krex spat, his voice like grinding metal. "Our scouts have been watching that pathetic world for months. They have barely figured out how to leave their own atmosphere. Their biggest weapons are small nuclear devices that can't even destroy a city properly. My youngest soldiers could conquer them in their sleep." Veltar shook his head sadly and activated the holographic projector in the center of the hall. Images began to fill the air above them, showing scenes that made several council members gasp in shock. "Look at their history," Veltar said quietly. "Really look at it." The first image showed massive armies clashing across muddy fields, millions of humans throwing themselves at each other with primitive weapons. Then came scenes of their cities burning, entire populations fleeing from advancing armies. "They have been fighting wars for their entire existence," Veltar continued. "Not small border disputes like most species, total wars. Wars where they would rather die than surrender." More images appeared. Humans in flying machines shooting at each other high above the clouds. Massive ships firing enormous guns across vast oceans. Cities reduced to rubble, yet humans still fighting from the ruins. "This is nothing," Krex laughed. "Primitive savages hitting each other with sticks and stones." "Wait," Veltar said, and the images changed. Now they showed something that made even the bravest warriors in the council step back. A bright flash that turned an entire city into dust in seconds. Then another flash, another city gone. The humans had learned to split the very building blocks of matter and turn them into weapons. They discovered atomic weapons barely 100 years after they learned to fly, Veltar said. "It took my people 3,000 years to make that same discovery. It took yours even longer, Krex." The War Marshal's confidence wavered slightly, but he quickly recovered. "So they can blow up their own cities. That doesn't make them dangerous to a real military force." Veltar's expression grew even more serious. "They didn't just make atomic weapons. They made diseases that could kill millions. They created chemicals that could poison entire regions. They built machines that could think and calculate faster than any organic mind. And they did all of this while constantly fighting each other." The hologram showed more recent images. Humans working together in space, building stations that orbited their world. Scientists in white coats working with complex equations. Engineers building machines that could explore other worlds. "But the most dangerous thing about humans," Veltar said slowly, "is not their weapons or their technology. It's how they think when they're threatened." New images appeared. Humans during their worst disasters working together to save each other. Cities hit by earthquakes with humans digging through rubble with their bare hands to save strangers. Floods where humans risked their lives to rescue people they had never met. When humans are attacked, they don't just fight back. They adapt. They learn. They turn everything around them into a weapon. They study their enemies until they understand them better than the enemies understand themselves. Far away from the council meeting, on the blue world they were discussing, life continued normally. Kyung-ho Park finished checking the giant telescope at Seoul Observatory, making notes about distant stars. He loved his job, spending nights looking at the universe and wondering what might be out there. He had no idea that something was looking back. In the busy port city of Busan, Bo-Ram Kim sat in her office at the military headquarters, reviewing South Korea's defense plans. It was routine work, updating protocols that everyone hoped would never be needed. She was good at her job, thinking through every possible threat and preparing responses, but she wasn't preparing for threats from space. In a small village surrounded by rice fields, Jun-Woo Lee helped his 8-year-old daughter, So Young, with her science homework. They sat at their kitchen table, looking at pictures of planets and stars in her textbook. "Papa, do you think there are people living on other planets?" So Young asked, pointing at a picture of Mars. Jun-Woo smiled and ruffled her hair. "Maybe, little one. The universe is very big. There could be all kinds of life out there. Do you think they would be friendly?" "I hope so," Jun-Woo said, not knowing that beings from another world were deciding his family's fate at that very moment. Back in the council hall, the debate continued. Several other species had spoken, some supporting Veltar's warning, others dismissing it. The ethereal collective worried about the precedent of allowing unprovoked attacks. The Trade Federation was concerned about disrupting shipping routes. The Crystal Singers simply wanted peace, but the Zephyrians had allies among the council, species that had benefited from their military strength or feared their retaliation. When the vote was called, it was close, but the result was clear. "The Tito motion to intervene is rejected," announced the council speaker, a being that looked like a floating crystal with a voice like wind chimes. "The Zephyrian Empire is free to proceed with their expansion." Krex stood up with triumph in his 4 eyes. "Thank you, wise council. We will deal with these humans quickly and efficiently. Within 1 cycle of their sun, their world will be part of our empire." Veltar remained standing as the other delegates began to file out. His voice carried across the emptying hall, sad and prophetic. "You have made a mistake that will echo across the galaxy. When the humans are done with you, Krex, there will be nothing left of your empire but ashes and regret." The War Marshal's laughter echoed off the crystal walls as he left to prepare his fleet. He had 1,000 ships, weapons that could crack, planets, and the confidence that came from 50 years of easy victories. He had no idea that he was about to awaken something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The morning sky above Earth suddenly filled with shapes that shouldn't exist. 1,000 alien warships appeared out of nowhere, their dark hulls blocking out the sun over major cities. People stopped in the streets, pointing upward with trembling fingers at the impossible sight. Admiral Dong-Hyun Choi had been drinking his morning coffee at the International Space Defense Command Center when every alarm in the building started screaming at once. He dropped his cup and ran to the main screen, watching as radar systems that had been empty seconds before now showed more contacts than the computers could count. "This has to be a mistake," whispered Lieutenant Park, but everyone in the room knew it wasn't. Communications Officer Hee-Jin Sun's hands shook as she adjusted her headset. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission. It's coming from all of them at once. Put it on the main screen." The face that appeared was like nothing from Earth's nightmares. War Marshal Krex's 4 eyes glowed with cold intelligence, his armored face showing no emotion as he delivered humanity's death sentence. "Beings of Earth, you have been selected for integration into the Zephyrian Empire. You have 1 rotation of your planet to surrender all military forces and government authority. Failure to comply will result in the complete destruction of your civilization. This is your only warning." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. President Min-ho Kang barely had time to process the message before his secure phone started ringing. World leaders were calling from every major capital, their voices tight, with barely controlled panic. "We need to evacuate the major cities," suggested the Defense Secretary. "Evacuate to where?" President Kang replied, looking at the tactical display. "They have ships positioned over every continent." In Tokyo, Prime Minister Yuki Tanaka was already coordinating with European allies, trying to establish some kind of unified response. The European Union President Elena Volkov was doing the same from Moscow, but everyone knew the truth that no one wanted to speak aloud. Earth's most advanced fighters were like toys compared to what hung in their sky. But while world leaders struggled with impossible decisions, ordinary people began to show what made humanity different from every other species the Zephyrians had conquered. Changmin Kim owned a small auto repair shop in Daegu. He had been working on an old truck when the alien ships appeared overhead. Instead of running or hiding, Changmin looked at the scattered electronics in his workshop and started thinking. By evening, he had torn apart every radio, computer, and electronic device he could find, building something that his grandfather would have called impossible. "If they can broadcast to us, we can listen to them," he muttered, soldering circuits, with steady hands despite the alien ships casting shadows over his shop. 3 hours later, Changmin was listening to Zephyrian military communications, understanding nothing but recording everything. Across the country in Seoul, software engineer Gyeonji Park was doing something similar in her tiny apartment. She had always been good with computers, but the alien transmission had given her an idea. If they could send signals to Earth, those signals had to follow some kind of pattern, and patterns could be broken. Yoonji hadn't slept since the ships arrived. Her apartment was now filled with borrowed equipment from her tech company, cables running everywhere as she tried to crack alien encryption. Her neighbors thought she had gone crazy, but Yoonji knew she was humanity's best hope of understanding what they were dealing with. When the first Zephyrian landing craft touched down in the mountains outside Seoul, the aliens expected to find terrified primitives begging for mercy. Instead, they found Jae Sung-nam and 24 of his neighbors waiting with hunting rifles, homemade explosives, and a determination that surprised everyone, including themselves. Jae Sung had been a soldier 20 years ago, but that was ancient history. Now he ran a small convenience store and coached his son's soccer team. When the aliens landed in his valley, though, something old and dangerous woke up inside him. "They picked the wrong mountain," he told his neighbors as they watched the alien craft settle in the rice fields. "My grandfather fought the Japanese here. My father fought here during the war. Now it's our turn." The first Zephyrian patrol that left their landing craft walked into an ambush that would have made Jae Sung's military instructors proud. The aliens had better weapons and armor, but they had never fought an enemy that knew every rock and tree in the area. When the second patrol came looking for the first, they found empty armor and weapons scattered across the mountainside. The humans had vanished like ghosts, taking everything useful with them. Dr. Sun Hee Lim was supposed to be on vacation that week. She had planned to visit her sister in Busan and relax after months of difficult research at the Seoul National University Engineering Lab. Instead, she found herself crouched in a forest clearing, staring at pieces of a crashed Zephyrian scout ship that Jae Sung's people had shot down. "Bring me everything," she told the local militia members. "Every wire, every piece of metal, everything that doesn't look like something from Earth." Dr. Lim had spent her career studying materials science, but alien technology was the challenge of a lifetime. As she carefully examined each piece, her mind raced with possibilities. The metal was stronger than anything humans had created, but it followed the same basic principles. The electronics were more advanced, but they still used recognizable patterns. "We can understand this," she whispered to herself. "We can learn from this." War Marshal Krex watched the reports coming in from the surface with growing confusion and anger. His forces had landed on dozens of worlds, and conquest had always followed the same pattern. The local population would panic, their governments would surrender, and within days the planet would be under Zephyrian control. But Earth was different. Instead of surrendering, the humans seemed to be getting more organized. Instead of running away, they were running toward the fight. Instead of begging for mercy, they were studying captured Zephyrian equipment and learning how to use it. How? "Long until the planet surrenders," Krex demanded of his tactical officer. "Sir, they haven't responded to our ultimatum at all. Their leaders are still meeting, but their military forces are actually increasing their resistance." Krex's 4 eyes narrowed. "Increase the bombardment. Target their major cities." "Sir, our ground forces are reporting unusual resistance. The humans are using our own weapons against us." For the first time since the invasion began, War Marshal Krex felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of conquest: doubt. In the refugee shelter that had been hastily set up in an abandoned school building, 8-year-old So Young Lee sat with her father, watching the older children play quiet games while adults whispered in worried voices. "Papa, when will the bad aliens go away?" she asked, her small hand holding tightly to his. Junwoo Lee looked out the window at the alien, ships hanging in the sky like dark clouds. But he also saw something else. Human fighter jets were streaking past, more than he had ever seen before. In the distance, he could hear the sound of construction as people worked around the clock to build defenses. "Soon, little one," he said. And for the first time since the invasion began, he actually believed it. The bad aliens made a big mistake. They thought we would be easy to beat, but they don't understand who they're fighting. Outside, another group of human fighters roared overhead, flying in formation toward the alien positions. Junwoo smiled grimly as he watched them disappear into the distance. "Soon," he repeated quietly. 3 months had passed since the alien. Ships first darkened Earth's skies, and everything had changed. What started as humanity's darkest hour had become something no one could have predicted. Colonel Tae-min-jung walked through what used to be a Zephyrian command center, his boots echoing on the strange metal floors. The facility had been carved deep into a mountain outside Seoul, protected by energy shields that were supposed to be impenetrable. Now it belonged to humanity, and the aliens who built it were either dead or prisoners. "Colonel, you need to see this," called Dr. Ji-won Park from across the room. She was surrounded by alien computers that hummed with energy, their displays showing symbols that had taken human linguists weeks to decode. Dr. Park had been a quantum physicist before the invasion. She spent her days studying theoretical problems that might have practical applications decades in the future. Now she was reverse engineering technology that was centuries ahead of human science, and she was doing it in months instead of years. "We've done it," she said, her voice barely containing her excitement. "We've cracked their faster-than-light communication system. We can send messages anywhere in the galaxy instantly." Colonel Young stared at the alien equipment. "You mean we can talk to their homeworld?" "Better than that. We can talk to every Zephyrian ship, every base, every world in their empire. We can send them whatever message we want, and they'll have to listen." The idea was staggering. For 3 months, humanity had been fighting a defensive war, trying to survive against an enemy that seemed impossibly advanced. Now suddenly, they could reach out and touch their enemy's entire civilization. Far below the surface, in a bunker that had been a subway maintenance tunnel before the war, Sang-wook Lee coordinated the global resistance from behind banks of screens that flickered with reports from every continent. Before the invasion, Sang-wook had been a mid-level manager at a telecommunications company. Now he was running the most sophisticated communication network in human history. Resistance cells in Africa report successful capture of 3 more alien aircraft, reported one of his assistants. Australian forces have secured an alien manufacturing facility. The Russians just took out an entire Zephyrian supply convoy. Sang-wook nodded, updating his tactical display. The resistance had grown from scattered groups of survivors into a coordinated global force. They used captured alien equipment to stay in contact, borrowed alien vehicles to move quickly, and turned the invaders' own weapons against them. In Taewi, a hidden facility in the mountains, Yoo-jin Kim led a team that would have been impossible to imagine before the war. They were hackers, but instead of breaking into human computers, they were infiltrating alien networks. Yoo-jin had been a cybersecurity expert for a major bank, spending his days protecting financial data from criminals. Now he was stealing military secrets from an alien empire. "We're inside their orbital surveillance network," Yoo-jin announced to his team. "We can see everything they see, and they don't even know we're there." His screens showed views from Zephyrian satellites, spy drones, and security cameras. The aliens thought they were watching humanity, but humanity was watching them right back. High above Earth's atmosphere, Captain Seok-jin Park piloted a fighter that looked like nothing that had ever flown before. It had human electronics, Zephyrian, engines and weapons that combined the best of both technologies. Seok-jin had been a test pilot before the war, pushing experimental aircraft to their limits. Now he was testing aircraft that used technology from another world. "Phoenix Squadron, this is Phoenix Leader," he spoke into his radio. Target the orbital platform at Grid 77 Alpha. Remember, these ships used to belong to them, but now they're ours. His squadron of modified fighters streaked toward the Zephyrian platform, their hybrid engines leaving trails of energy that would have been impossible with human technology alone. Back in the captured command center, the moment everyone had been waiting for finally arrived. President Minho Kang stood before the alien communication equipment, preparing to send a message that would be heard across the galaxy. "Mr. President, we're ready," Dr. Ji-won Park announced. "Every Zephyrian communication device in their empire will receive this transmission." President Kang had spent 3 months watching his people fight and die against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. He had seen cities burned, families separated, and an entire world turned into a battlefield. Now it was time for the Zephyrians to understand what they had awakened. "Citizens of the Zephyrian Empire," he began, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was doing. "This is the President of Earth. 3 months ago you came to our world uninvited. You attacked our cities, threatened our families, and tried to make us your slaves. You thought we would surrender quickly like all the others." He paused, letting the words echo across space to 1,000 different worlds. "You were wrong. We are not your previous victims. We are humanity, and we do not surrender. We adapt, we learn, we fight back. You came to our home uninvited. Now we're coming to yours." The message went out instantly, faster than light, reaching every corner of the Zephyrian Empire simultaneously. On 1,000 worlds, alien commanders received humanity's declaration of war with growing panic. War Marshal Krex was in his flagship, trying to coordinate increasingly desperate defenses when the human message reached him. As he listened to the alien words translated into his own language, he felt something he had never experienced in 50 years of conquest. Fear. The reports flooding in from across his territory told an impossible story. Human strike teams were infiltrating military bases that should have been impregnable. Captain Wu Jin Lee and his boarding parties were capturing entire Zephyrian vessels, turning the crews into prisoners and the ships into human weapons. Lieutenant Sora Kim had developed new tactics that used alien technology in ways its creators never intended. She led squadrons of human pilots flying captured Zephyrian fighters, moving with coordination that made veteran alien commanders look like beginners. In the Seoul Command Center, Admiral Dong-hyun Choi watched his tactical display with satisfaction. Red icons representing Zephyrian positions were disappearing one by one, replaced by blue symbols showing human control. "Sir, the orbital platforms over North America have just gone dark," reported Intelligence Officer Hai Jin-sun. "Human forces have captured or destroyed all of them." Ye Jin had been coordinating with resistance cells across the globe, and what she saw amazed her every day. Humans were not just fighting back. They were winning. They were using alien technology to communicate instantly across the solar system, coordinating attacks with precision that impressed even their enemies. Dr. Sun-hee Lim entered the command center carrying a device that looked like nothing Earth had ever produced. It was sleek, powerful, and humming with energy that made the air around it shimmer. "Admiral, I have something to show the War Council," she announced. "We've not only matched their technology, we've improved it." She activated the device, and a holographic display appeared showing technical specifications that made the military officers lean forward with interest. "This is a human-designed faster-than-light engine," Dr. Lim explained. "It's based on Zephyrian technology, but we've made it 30% more efficient. Our new ships will be faster than anything in their fleet." Admiral Choi smiled for the first time in months. "How long until we can start production?" "The first prototype ships will be ready within weeks. After that, we can begin full-scale production." Across the galaxy, the Zephyrian Empire was learning what Ambassador Veltar had tried to warn them about. Humans didn't just fight back when attacked. They became something more dangerous than their attackers had ever imagined. The tide had turned. The hunters had become the hunted, and humanity was just getting started. The stars themselves seemed to tremble as humanity's fleets moved through space like a storm of vengeance. What had started as Earth's desperate defense had become something the galaxy had never witnessed before. Humans weren't just pushing back the Zephyrian invasion, they were hunting down every alien ship and base across multiple star systems. Admiral Chang-Woo Kim stood on the bridge of the flagship Seoul's Pride, watching enemy positions disappear. From his tactical display one by one. 6 months ago, he had been defending Earth's orbital stations with outdated human technology. Now he commanded a fleet of ships that combined the best of human engineering with captured alien science, creating vessels that were faster and deadlier than anything the Zephyrians had ever built. Admiral, long-range scouts report 3 more Zephyrian outposts in the Kepler system, reported his tactical officer. They appear to be supply bases for their military operations. Chang-Woo studied the holographic star map floating before him. The Zephyrian Empire had dozens of worlds, hundreds of military installations, and thousands of ships scattered across this region of space. But humans had something the aliens had never encountered before, the ability to learn and adapt faster than their enemies could respond. "Signal Captain Min-jae Park," Chang-Woo ordered. "Tell him his infiltration teams have new targets." Far ahead of the main fleet, Captain Min-jae Park piloted a ship that looked exactly like a Zephyrian patrol vessel. His crew spoke perfect Zephyrian, wore captured alien uniforms, and carried forged identification codes. They had done this dozens of times before, approaching enemy bases as if they belonged there, then striking from within when the aliens least expected it. "Zephyrian Base Control. This is patrol vessel Sharpclaw requesting permission to dock for routine maintenance." Min-jae spoke into his communicator, his voice perfectly mimicking alien speech patterns. "Permission granted. Sharpclaw. Proceed." To docking Bay 7, Min-jae smiled grimly as his ship settled into the alien base. The Zephyrians would realize their mistake soon enough, but by then it would be far too late. On the industrial world of Keftar, Major Yoon-soo Lee led her troops through facilities that had been built with slave labor from a dozen different species. The Zephyrians had conquered these beings decades ago, forcing them to work in dangerous conditions to build weapons and ships for further conquest. "Secure the main compound," Yoon-soo ordered her soldiers as they moved through the facility. "I want every slave freed and every Zephyrian commander captured alive." But what happened next would have surprised anyone who knew about typical military conquests. Instead of execution squads and revenge killings, Dr. Yeon-soo Jung set up field hospitals that treated wounded Zephyrians with the same care given to human soldiers. Dr. Jung had been a trauma surgeon in Seoul before the war. She had seen the worst that conflict could do to living beings, and she refused to let hatred turn her into something inhuman. As she worked to save the life of a wounded Zephyrian officer, she also carefully studied alien physiology and psychology, gathering information that would help humanity understand their enemies better. "Why are you helping me?" the alien officer asked weakly as Dr. Jung finished bandaging his wounds. "Because that's what humans do," she replied simply. "We fight when we must, but we don't become monsters." The psychological impact of human medical care on Zephyrian prisoners was something Colonel Sung-ho Nam had learned to use as a weapon more powerful than any bomb. Before the war, he had been a professor of psychology at Yonsei University. Now, he was pioneering a new kind of warfare that attacked enemy morale instead of their bodies. "Broadcast this to every Zephyrian communication network," he told his media team as they recorded interviews with captured aliens who had been treated in human hospitals. The recordings showed something that shattered Zephyrian propaganda about savage human primitives. Here were their own soldiers, healthy and well-fed, explaining how humans had provided medical care even to those who had tried to kill them. The broadcast spread through the alien empire faster than any military advance, causing whole units to surrender rather than fight an enemy who showed such unexpected mercy. At the Galactic Council, Ambassador Kyung-min Park stood before representatives from dozens of species, delivering terms that no one had ever imagined would come from the small blue world that had been marked for easy conquest. "The Zephyrian colony of New Kef has agreed to surrender unconditionally," he announced to the stunned assembly. "They will be placed under human protection while we establish new civilian government. Any species enslaved by the Zephyrians will be freed and offered passage to their homeworlds or the opportunity to settle on human-protected planets." the other ambassadors whispered among themselves in amazement. Humans weren't just defeating the Zephyrian Empire, they were dismantling it piece by piece and offering better alternatives to everyone who had suffered under alien rule. Each world that surrendered to humanity became a base for the next advance. Fleet Commander Du Young Kim had developed supply lines that spanned multiple star systems, using captured alien technology to move resources faster than anyone had thought possible. "We have 47 forward bases now," he reported to Admiral Chang Woo Kim during their weekly strategy meeting. "Each one can support a full battle group and serve as a staging area for further operations." Strategic analyst Bo-Ra Lee studied enemy communications with the same intensity she had once applied to stock market patterns. Before the war, she had been one of Seoul's most successful financial analysts, predicting market movements with uncanny accuracy. Now she applied those same skills to military intelligence, always staying 3 moves ahead of Zephyrian commanders. "War Marshal Krex will try to make a stand at the Rigel system," she predicted, pointing to star charts that covered the wall of the intelligence center. "He'll pull back his remaining fleets and try to defend their industrial worlds." "How can you be so certain?" asked Admiral Chang-woo. "Because it's what I would do in his position. He's running out of options, and Rigel is the only system that can still produce the ships he needs to continue fighting." Back on Earth, life had slowly begun to return to something resembling normal. The alien occupation was over, and human. Fleets now protected the home system better than any defense that had ever existed. In his small village, Junwoo Lee sat with his daughter So Young, watching news reports about the war that was still raging among distant stars. "The aliens are running away, Papa," So Young observed, pointing at the screen that showed Zephyrian ships retreating from another human advance. Junwoo nodded, remembering the words of Ambassador Veltar that had been broadcast across the galaxy months ago. The old alien had tried to warn his people about what would happen if they attacked humanity, but no one had listened. "Yes, little one," he said, watching human ships pursue their fleeing enemies across the void. "They finally understand what." They awakened. Thousands of light years away, War Marshal Krex stood in the command center of his last major stronghold, watching his empire crumble on displays that had once shown nothing but victory. Reports flooded in from every corner of Zephyrian space. Human fleets were everywhere, moving with coordination and purpose that made his own military look primitive by comparison. "All remaining ships are ordered to return to the homeworld immediately," he broadcast to his scattered forces, his voice heavy with defeat. "Abandon all forward positions. Abandon all occupied worlds. The humans are coming and we cannot stop them." For the first time in 50 years of conquest, the mighty Zephyrian Empire was in full retreat, and behind them, growing stronger with every victory, came humanity's fleets, carrying a message that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. The age of easy conquest was over. The humans had awakened, and nothing would ever be the same again. The final battle never came. Instead, something far more devastating happened to the Zephyrian Empire. It simply became irrelevant. President Min Ho Kang stood in what had once been the throne room of the Zephyrian homeworld, looking at War Marshal Krex with a mixture of pity and resolve. The alien commander who had once boasted about crushing Earth in days now knelt before a human leader, his forearms bound, his proud armor cracked and dulled. Around them, the great palace that had housed the center of galactic conquest for centuries lay in ruins. But these weren't the ruins of destruction. They were the ruins of abandonment. Most Zephyrians had simply walked away from their empire when they realized it could no longer protect them. "War Marshal Krex," President Kang began, his voice echoing. "In the vast chamber, your empire is finished. Your fleets are scattered, your worlds have surrendered, and your people have lost faith in your leadership. But I'm not here to gloat over your defeat." Krex raised his head, confusion visible in his alien features. Every species his people had conquered had demanded revenge, tribute, or destruction. What was this human planning? "I offer you 2 choices," President Kang continued. "First, integration as a protectorate under human oversight. Your people will be relocated to suitable worlds, given meaningful work, and allowed to rebuild their civilization under our guidance. You will be treated fairly, but you will never again have the power to threaten innocent worlds." The fallen war marshal's mandibles clicked in what might have been bitter laughter. And the second choice? Exile to a single world of your choosing. Take your most loyal followers and disappear from galactic politics forever. Live quietly, and we will ensure you're left alone. For a long moment, the chamber was silent except for the wind whistling through broken windows. Finally, Krex spoke, his voice heavy with defeat. Exile, he said quietly. We choose exile. President Kang nodded. He had expected this answer. The Zephyrian imperial pride, even broken, could not accept the humiliation of living under human protection. So be it. You have 1 month to gather your people and choose your world. After that, any Zephyrian military vessel found in occupied space will be destroyed. Across the galaxy, news of the war's end spread faster than human fleets had moved during their advance. But what shocked other species wasn't that humanity had won. It was how they had won, and what they chose to do with victory. Ambassador Veltar made his way slowly to the Galactic Council chambers, expecting to find the usual crowds of representatives from dozens of worlds. Instead, he found nearly empty halls and echoing corridors. Most species had closed their embassies to the Council and opened new ones on Earth instead. "The age of the Council is ending," he murmured to himself, as he entered the vast meeting chamber where only a handful of representatives remained. "Honored colleagues," Veltar announced to the sparse assembly, "I have come to deliver my final report as an observer of human-Zephyrian relations." The few remaining ambassadors leaned forward to listen. Everyone wanted to understand how a species that had barely achieved spaceflight had dismantled an empire that had dominated this region of the galaxy for centuries. "The humans offer something we have never seen before," Veltar continued. "They fight with the fury of cornered predators when threatened, but show mercy to the defeated. They study their enemies not just to destroy them, but to understand them. And most importantly, they view victory not as an end, but as a beginning." Meanwhile, on Earth, Ambassador Kyung-Min Park was preparing for humanity's first official delegation to the remaining galactic governments. His ships carried not weapons or demands for tribute, but something far more revolutionary: blueprints for improved faster-than-light drives, medical technologies that could extend the lifespan of most species, and proposals for trade agreements that would benefit everyone involved. "We're not here to replace the Zephyrian Empire," Ambassador Park announced to the gathered alien representatives. "We're here to make sure nothing like it ever exists again." Dr. Sun-Hee Lim presented cultural exchange programs that fascinated alien representatives. She had designed programs where young humans and aliens could study together, learn each other's languages, and work on joint scientific projects. "Knowledge shared is knowledge multiplied," she explained to a gathering of alien educators. "We want to learn from you as much as we want to teach." Economic advisor Jae-Hyun Kim was busy negotiating trade deals that would reshape how the galaxy did business. Before the war, he had been a successful businessman in Seoul. Now he was helping design an economic system based on cooperation rather than exploitation. "The Zephyrians conquered through force," he explained to alien trade ministers. "We prefer to succeed through mutual benefit. When everyone profits, everyone has a reason to maintain peace." Back on Earth, life was slowly returning to something resembling normal, though it was a new kind of normal that included regular contact with dozens of alien species. Chang Min Kim had reopened his auto repair shop in Daegu, but now he was servicing vehicles that used hybrid human-alien technology. His garage had become a gathering place for local residents who wanted to hear stories about the early days of the resistance. "I never thought I'd be fixing flying cars," he laughed as he worked on a vehicle that hovered 3 feet off the ground. "But I suppose humans can get used to anything." Yoonji Park had founded a technology company that specialized in interstellar communication systems. Her apartment, which had once been filled with improvised equipment for hacking alien signals, was now the headquarters of a business that employed hundreds of people and maintained communication networks across multiple star systems. "We started by listening to their conversations," she told her new employees during orientation. "Now we're helping the galaxy have better conversations with itself." Dr. Ji-Won Park had established the first human galactic technology institute, where the brightest minds from dozens of species worked together on projects that would have been impossible for any single world to accomplish alone. Cooperation is the most powerful technology in the universe, she often told her students. Everything else is just tools. In his small village, Junwoo Lee was tucking his daughter So Young into bed, just as he had done before the war began. But now when she looked up at the night sky, the stars held different meaning. "Papa, will we visit other worlds someday?" So Young asked, her eyes bright with curiosity. Junwoo smiled, remembering when those same stars had been filled with alien warships intent on conquest. "Yes, daughter, we'll visit many worlds, but we'll go as friends, not conquerors." "Will the aliens be our friends?" "The ones who want to be friends, yes. The ones who don't, well, they'll leave us alone." So Young nodded seriously, then settled back into her pillow. "Good, I want to see alien animals and try alien food." Junwoo chuckled softly as he turned off the light. Outside, the night sky sparkled with stars that were no longer threatening, but full of infinite possibility. The galaxy had learned the lesson that Ambassador Veltar had tried to teach them so long ago. Humanity offered partnership, trade, and friendship to those who approached with respect and peaceful intentions. But to those who mistook human cooperation for weakness, who thought kindness meant vulnerability, they offered only the ashes of their ambitions and the memory of what had once been a mighty empire. The age of human expansion had begun, but it was unlike any expansion the galaxy had ever seen. It grew not through conquest and fear, but through respect earned by showing that even the mightiest empire could be turned to dust when it threatened the innocent, and mercy could be offered even to those who had shown none. The humans had kept their promise. They had turned the Zephyrian Empire to ashes, but from those ashes they had built something better.